My name is Claire Anderson. I'm 33, and 7 years ago, I built a company called Nexus Core on little more than a powerful idea and sheer grit. My software firm blossomed into a multi-million-dollar entity, and I brought my family along for the ride. My brother, my sister, and my father became my top executives. I genuinely believe that in the world of business, blood meant unbreakable loyalty. I was so wrong. This morning, a single brutal text from my own brother flashed on my screen. Board approved a new structure. Security will see you out tomorrow. If you've ever put your trust in family for a business venture, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and click subscribe to witness my story of deep betrayal and the meticulously planned comeback they never saw coming. I graduated from MIT with a degree in computer science and this burning ambition to create software that would fundamentally change how companies protect their data. While my peers were scrambling for coveted positions at places like Google and Apple, I had a vision that was too intense to put on the back burner. I was determined to forge my own path, to create something that would leave a real mark. Nexus Core was born in the cramped garage of my small apartment, armed with just a laptop and what I can only describe as a borderline unhealthy level of determination. Those first years were a grind. I'd be up at dawn coding until well past midnight, living on a diet of cheap instant coffee and protein bars. The initial version of our security software was the product of 3 straight months of relentless work. I even dragged a mattress into the garage to sleep next to my desk, because the short walk to my bedroom felt like a waste of precious time. The big breakthrough was an encryption algorithm I developed that was not only tougher to crack, but also significantly more efficient than anything else available. I knew it was a game changer, but I also knew I couldn't transform this code into a real company by myself. That's when I turned to my family. My brother Leo had just gotten his MBA and was working for a marketing agency in New York. I called him at 2 a.m, buzzing with too much excitement to consider the time. "Leo, you need to quit your job and come work with me," I said, skipping any sort of greeting. "Claire, are you okay? Are you drunk?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "I just cracked it. The code works. This is going to be massive, and I need someone who gets marketing, who can build a business." There was a long silence on the line before he finally sighed. "Fine. Send me the business plan. I'll read it in the morning." 2 weeks later, Leo was my chief marketing officer. His strategic mind was instrumental in shaping our business model and identifying our first major clients. My sister, Sophie, was the next person I called. She had always been the hyper-organized one, the person who could bring order to chaos. She was working as an operations manager for a large retail company, and getting her on board was much easier. "I was wondering when you'd finally ask," she said when I called her. "Leo won't shut up about how brilliant your software is. I'm in." With Sophie managing our day-to-day operations, we started to look and feel like a real company. She implemented our internal systems, hired our initial staff, and built the operational framework that allowed us to grow. The last piece of the puzzle was my father, Robert. He'd spent over 30 years in corporate finance and was on the cusp of retirement. When I asked him to be our CFO, he seemed hesitant. "Are you sure you want to mix family and business to this degree, Claire?" he asked, a note of caution in his voice. "It can make things complicated." I just smiled at him. "Dad, I trust all of you more than anyone on this planet. Who better to build this with than the people who've had my back my whole life?" He gave me that proud smile, the one I'd been trying to earn since I was a little girl. "All right then," he said. "Let me go talk to your mother about putting our retirement trip on hold." With my family as my executive team, Nexus Core took off like a rocket. Within 2 years, we had over 50 employees and a sleek office downtown. Our security software was being adopted by mid-sized businesses all over the country, and the big industry players were starting to take notice. Our family get-togethers became strategy sessions. Sunday dinners at my parents' house would always circle back to business. We had running jokes about our competitors and popped a bottle of champagne for every new contract, no matter the size. I'll never forget the night we signed our first truly massive client, a financial firm that agreed to a $3 million deal. We were all still at the office when the signed papers came through on the fax machine. Sophie let out a shriek so loud I thought she'd shattered a window. My father broke out a bottle of 30-year-old scotch he'd been saving for a special occasion. Leo swept me off my feet and spun me around until we were both dizzy and laughing. "You did it, Claire," he said, his eyes shining. "You actually did it." "No," I corrected him, feeling a wave of emotion. "We did it. This is a family win." That evening, we celebrated at the fanciest restaurant in town. As I looked around the table at my family, all of them radiant with success and a sense of infinite possibility, I felt a deep sense of completeness. My father proposed a toast to me, calling me his brilliant girl and saying he'd never been prouder. My mother, who wasn't involved in the company, was just beaming. Sophie and Leo were already joking about the vacation homes they were going to buy. I truly believe that moment was the beginning of our dynasty, a family that would build an empire together, supporting one another through thick and thin. My head was filled with grand plans for international expansion, new product lines, maybe even taking the company public one day. How could I have possibly known that the very success we were celebrating was planting the seeds of betrayal? That the same people raising their glasses to my vision would one day conspire to lock me out of it completely? People always say you shouldn't mix business and family. I really should have listened. But in those early, heady days, with the future shining so brightly before us, it felt like the most perfect partnership imaginable. I trusted them with everything. After all, who could possibly be more loyal than the people who had known you and loved you your entire life? It would take another 2 years for me to see the cracks starting to appear in our perfect family empire. 2 years of incredible growth. 2 years before I would learn the most brutal lesson of my life. The first signs were so faint I barely registered them. A closed-door meeting I wasn't told about. Sophie and Leo sharing a look across the table while I was presenting. Little things, easily explained away as the normal hustle and bustle of a growing company. By that point, we had over 100 employees and were approaching $15 million in annual revenue. Success had arrived faster than any of us had dreamed, and it brought a new kind of pressure. I convinced myself that the strange tension I was sensing was just a natural part of scaling up. Then, one afternoon, I was walking past the main conference room and heard my name. I stopped outside the door, not meaning to eavesdrop, but wondering why my father was holding a meeting I knew nothing about. "Claire is brilliant with the tech. No one is questioning that," my father was saying. "But her leadership style is becoming a real liability as we get bigger." "The engineers adore her," Leo replied, "but the sales and marketing teams find her impossible. She's too controlling." "She still acts like this is a startup in her garage," Sophie added. "We need more professional management if we're going to keep this momentum." I stood there, frozen, the hurt washing over me in sickening waves. This wasn't a professional discussion about business concerns. This was my family, talking about me behind my back. I pushed the door open. 3 sets of eyes shot towards me, widening in shock. "Well, if you have concerns about my leadership," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm inside me, "I'd appreciate you bringing them to me directly." My father was the first to recover. "Claire, we were just going over some team feedback. It's nothing serious. We were planning to raise it at the next executive meeting." I just nodded, not trusting myself to say anything else, and walked away. That night, I called my best friend, Mia. "Be careful, Claire," she warned after I told her what happened. "I've seen this play out before. Family businesses get ugly when big money is on the table. They would never try to push me out," I said, with a confidence I didn't truly feel. "It's my company. I built it from scratch. Just watch your back," Mia insisted, "and maybe have a lawyer look over your corporate structure, just to make sure you're protected." I brushed off her concerns as paranoia. This was my family. We'd had disagreements before, but we always worked through them. The next alarm bell rang about a month later when a venture capital firm offered to invest $25 million for a 30% stake in the company. It was a fantastic valuation, but I was hesitant. Bringing in outside investors meant giving up a degree of control, and I had always pictured Nexus Corp remaining a family-owned business. To my shock, my family was unanimously in favor of the deal. "This is how businesses grow, Claire," my father explained patiently, as if to a child. "We can't fund our expansion goals without outside capital." "We've been profitable for 2 years," I countered. "We can grow organically on our own terms." "The market won't wait for us," Leo argued. "Our competitors are raising tens of millions. We have to scale now or we'll be left in the dust." The meeting ended at an impasse. As CEO and majority shareholder, I had the final say, and I decided to hold off on taking investment for at least another year. The disappointment on their faces was a tangible thing in the room, but I held my ground. After that meeting, things started to unravel much faster. I found my access to certain financial reports was suddenly delayed or restricted. My father claimed it was a new security protocol they were testing, but it felt like I was being intentionally kept in the dark. Leo started openly questioning my decisions in front of other employees, undermining my authority. Sophie would schedule critical client meetings at times she knew I was unavailable, then offer a flimsy apology for the oversight. The situation boiled over during a board meeting about our product roadmap. I was proposing a new security suite that would require a significant upfront investment, but had the potential to double our market share. "This is too risky," my father said flatly. "We should be protecting our core business." "I agree with Dad," Sophie chimed in. "The numbers don't support this kind of speculative RD. We haven't even run the full financial projections yet," I said, my frustration mounting. "Actually, we have," Leo said, sliding a folder across the polished table. "The finance team put these together last week." I stared at the document. It was dated 8 days prior, and this was the first I was seeing it. Why wasn't I included in this analysis? "We didn't want to bother you with the preliminary figures," my father said smoothly. "You've had your hands full with the technical side. My proposal was tabled indefinitely. As they all filed out of the room, I sat there alone, a cold, sinking feeling in my gut. Mia's warning echoed in my ears. I called her again that night. "Something is really wrong," I admitted. "I can't prove it, but I feel like they're trying to sideline me in my own company." "Did you ever check the company bylaws?" Mia asked. "What kind of protection do you have as the founder?" "I own 51% of the shares," I said. "They can't make any major moves without me." "That's good," she replied, "but be careful. No one can hurt you like your own family can." I should have listened. I should have done something right then. Instead, I told myself we could still fix this, that my family would never truly betray me. That blood was thicker than water, thicker than money. I was wrong about everything. The next few months were a masterclass in corporate sabotage. I started documenting every strange incident, every conversation that felt off. The pattern was undeniable. One Tuesday morning, I came in early to prep for a big client presentation. As I walked by my assistant's desk, I saw a document in her printer tray labeled Nexus Corp Restructuring Proposal. "What's this?" I asked, picking it up. She went pale. "Mr. Anderson asked me to print it for a meeting this afternoon. I thought you knew." I skimmed the first page. It laid out a plan to completely reorganize the executive team. It created a new position, executive chairman, for my father. My role as CEO would technically remain, but its responsibilities would be redefined to focus purely on technical vision, stripping me of any real leadership or decision-making power. They were gutting my role and hadn't said a word to me. I walked straight to my father's office with the document and shut the door. "Explain this," I said, dropping it on his desk. He glanced at it, then leaned back in his chair with a heavy sigh. This was meant to be a preliminary discussion, Claire. Nothing has been decided. A preliminary discussion that doesn't include the CEO and majority shareholder? A discussion about fundamentally changing the leadership of my company? Our company, he corrected me. And yes, the board has some concerns about the current structure. We're just exploring options. The board is you, Leo, Sophie, and me. When exactly did the three of you have this discussion without me? He actually had the decency to look away. Claire, we're just trying to do what's best for Nexus Corp. The company is past its startup phase. It needs more conventional leadership. Conventional leadership, I repeated, the words tasting like poison, meaning not me. No one is trying to push you out, he insisted, the lie hanging in the air between us. We value your technical genius, but a growing company requires a different skill set. I left his office feeling physically ill. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a concrete plan. Over the next few weeks, I watched as my family held closed-door meetings with key employees. Department heads who had once been my staunchest allies suddenly became distant and evasive. Projects I had championed were hit with mysterious delays and roadblocks. Things escalated when I found out I'd been cut out of a meeting with our largest client. I only discovered it when the client's VP mentioned yesterday's productive session on a call. Which session was that? I asked, trying to sound casual. The strategy meeting at your office. Your brother gave a great presentation on the 5-year plan, a 5-year plan I had never even seen. That evening, I cornered Leo in his office. Why wasn't I told about the meeting with Westbrook Financial? I demanded. He didn't even bother to look up from his laptop. It was just a preliminary chat. We were going to brief you once we had something concrete. I'm the CEO, Leo. There are no meetings with our biggest client that I don't know about. He finally met my gaze, and the coldness in his eyes was a shock. Claire, you need to start trusting your team to manage these things. You can't micromanage every single interaction. This isn't about micromanaging. This is about being deliberately shut out. He sighed, a patronizing sound, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. We'll be sure to include you in the next one. As I turned to leave, my eyes fell on a presentation deck on his desk. On the cover was the logo of Sterling International, a firm run by a notorious corporate raider named Victor Sterling, a man known for buying up promising companies, stripping them for their assets, and firing most of the staff. The atmosphere in the office had become toxic. Employees could feel the tension at the top, and it was crushing morale. The vibrant, innovative culture I had fought so hard to build was being replaced by a cold corporate fear. I needed advice from someone outside the situation, so I reached out to Dr. Evelyn Reed, a former professor who had become a mentor. We met for coffee far away from the office. They're pushing me out, I told her after laying out the whole sordid story. My own family. Dr. Reed listened patiently. It's a classic story, I'm afraid. Success changes people. Money poisons relationships. What do I do? First, she said, protect yourself legally. Make sure your ownership is ironclad. Second, try to see their side. Is there any truth to their concerns about your leadership? I thought about it honestly. I'm not perfect. I can be demanding, I get impatient, but I built this company from the ground up. Our success isn't an accident. Then maybe a compromise is possible, she suggested. Could you bring in an experienced COO to handle the business side while you focus on the vision and the tech? I nodded. It sounded reasonable. I'll suggest it. But when I proposed the idea, it was shot down instantly. We don't need another executive, my father said. The issue isn't a lack of people. Then what is the issue? I pressed. Sophie exchanged a look with Leo before she answered. The issue, Claire, is that you refuse to see that Nexus Corp has outgrown your ability to lead it. The words felt like a physical slap. My own sister. The final straw came a week later. Our latest product launch was delayed due to technical bugs I hadn't been told about. When I investigated, I found that Leo had ordered the development team to change key specifications without my approval. The changes had created a cascade of problems, setting us back weeks and jeopardizing a multi-million-dollar contract. When I confronted him, his response was chilling. Maybe if you spent more time actually managing your team instead of playing the visionary, these things wouldn't happen. That night, I stayed late, digging through the financial records I could still access. What I found made my blood run cold. My family members had approved massive bonuses for themselves, all while claiming we needed to cut costs. There were huge consulting fees paid to shell companies I'd never heard of, with vague invoices for strategic services. I took pictures of every document with my phone, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and grief. The evidence was irrefutable. They were bleeding the company dry while telling me I was the one running it into the ground. The next evening was our monthly family dinner at my parents' house. I almost didn't go, but I had to look them in the eye. The dinner was agony. They made small talk, acting as if everything was perfectly normal, as if they weren't systematically dismantling my life's work. My mother, completely oblivious, chattered on about her garden club. As she served dessert, I couldn't stand it any longer. "When were you going to tell me about the restructuring plan?" I asked, my voice cutting through the fake pleasantries. The table fell silent. My mother looked from face to face, confused. "What restructuring plan?" "The one where Dad becomes executive chairman, and I get demoted to a figurehead," I said, looking straight at him. I turned to my mother. "Did they tell you they're planning to kick me out of my own company?" "Claire, that is not what is happening," my father said, his voice stern. "And this is not the time or place." "Then when is the time? After you've already taken everything from me?" Sophie rolled her eyes. "You're being so dramatic. No one is taking anything." "Really? Not the company I built? Not my job? Not my authority? Not even my client relationships? You built it, but you can't take it to the next level," Leo said, his voice like ice. "Sometimes a founder needs to step aside for the good of the company." I stood up, unable to breathe the same air as them for another second. "I never thought my own family would do this to me. I trusted you. I brought you in. I made you all rich. And this is how you repay me." As I walked to the door, my father called out, "Claire, you're overreacting. Let's just talk about this rationally." I turned back one last time. There is nothing rational about betrayal. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally faced the truth. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a difference in business strategy. This was a cold, calculated coup to steal my company, and it was being orchestrated by the people I loved. I barely slept, my mind a whirlwind of hurt, anger, and fear. But by morning, I had made a decision. I would not go down without a fight. Nexus Corp was mine, and I would protect it, even if it meant protecting it from my own family. I had no idea how quickly things were about to escalate, or that in less than 48 hours, my entire world would be turned upside down. The next morning, I drove to the office before dawn, my mind strangely clear despite the sleepless night. I was going to call an emergency board meeting. As majority shareholder, I still had that right. When I got to the main entrance of our building and swiped my key card, the panel flashed red. Access denied. I tried again. Same result. A security guard I didn't recognize approached me. "Miss Anderson, I need you to come with me, please." "My card isn't working," I said. "Yes, ma'am. I have instructions to escort you to the conference room." A cold dread settled in my stomach. "Instructions from who?" "From Mr. Anderson, your father. The rest of the board is waiting." So this was it. Not even the courtesy of a phone call. I followed the guard through my own building, acutely aware of the employees who stopped and stared as I was walked through the halls like a trespasser. The conference room door opened to reveal my father, Leo, and Sophie, all sitting on one side of the long table, their faces grim masks of professionalism. 3 other people I didn't know sat with them. "Claire," my father said, his voice void of any warmth. "Please have a seat." I remained standing. "What is this?" Leo slid a document across the table. The board has voted to remove you as CEO, effective immediately. I stared at him, the words not making sense. That's not possible. I own 51% of this company, as you'll see in Section 3 of the bylaws, one of the strangers said, his voice smooth and reptilian. The board can remove an officer who has demonstrated conduct detrimental to the company. Conduct detrimental? I repeated, my voice incredulous. I founded this company. Our revenue has grown every single quarter under my leadership. Your management style has become increasingly erratic, Sophie said, refusing to meet my eyes. You've alienated key staff members and damaged client relationships. Your obsession with unproven tech threatens our core business. That's a lie and you know it, I said, my voice rising. This is a coup. We have documented evidence, my father said, pushing a thick folder toward me. Testimonials from employees about your hostile behavior. Complaints from clients about missed deadlines. I flipped it open. It was a masterfully curated collection of half-truths and twisted narratives. Minor disagreements spun into major conflicts. Moments of passion described as instability. You manufactured this, I said, closing the folder. You've been building this fake case against me for months. You're too emotionally invested to see things clearly, Leo said. Nexus Corp has outgrown you, Claire. We need professional management. Professional management? I shot back. Like the three of you. The ones who've been padding your own pockets and making secret deals while pretending to care about this company's future? My father's face hardened. That's enough. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. Your company email and network access have been terminated. I looked at each of them, one by one. These people who shared my DNA, who I had celebrated holidays with my entire life. Does Mom know what you're doing? A flicker of something, maybe shame, crossed my father's face. This is a business decision, not a family matter. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Everything about this is a family matter. You just destroyed ours for a payday. You need to leave now, Sophie said, her voice cold. Don't make this harder than it has to be. The security guard stepped forward. The humiliation was a burning fire in my chest. To be forced to clean out my desk while my employees watched, to be escorted from the building I built like a common criminal. I built this company, I said, my voice finally breaking. Everything you have because of my work, my vision. And we're grateful for your contributions, my father said, sounding anything but. You will be well compensated for your shares once a fair valuation is completed. I turned and walked out without another word. At my office, a cardboard box was already waiting on my desk. Someone had been through my things. As I numbly placed photos and personal items into the box, my phone buzzed. A text from Leo. Expect a call from our lawyer. We're offering a fair buyout for your shares. I didn't reply. Employees watched through the glass walls of their offices as I carried my box of shame to the elevator. In the parking garage, I tossed the box in my trunk, got in my car, and just sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. And only then, in the privacy of my car, did I let the tears come. I sobbed until I couldn't breathe, the full weight of the betrayal crashing down on me. This wasn't just losing a company, it was losing my family, my identity, my life's work, all in a single morning. As night fell, I was still on my couch, replaying every interaction from the past year, seeing all the red flags I had willfully ignored. The closed-door meetings, the growing coldness, the outright lies. I scrolled through photos on my phone, images of happier times, a picture from our holiday party just months ago, all of us with our arms around each other, a united front. The contrast between that image and the cold, dead eyes across the conference table was too much. I turned off my phone and curled into a ball, too exhausted to even make it to bed. As I drifted into a fitful sleep, one thought kept circling in my head. This could not be the end of my story. There had to be a way to fight back. I just had no idea what it was. I woke the next morning with swollen eyes and a sudden, startling clarity. Something my father had said echoed in my mind. You will be well compensated for your shares. My shares. My 51% ownership of Nexus Corp. They had fired me as CEO, but they couldn't take my shares without my consent. In their arrogance, they had assumed I would just roll over and take their buyout. I grabbed my phone and called Mark Jennings, the lawyer who had helped me set up the company years ago. He agreed to see me immediately. In his office, I laid out the entire story. Can they really do this? I asked. Mark reviewed the company bylaws. Unfortunately, yes. Section 3 gives the board the power to remove an officer under these kinds of circumstances. They followed procedure, even if the evidence is fabricated. My heart sank. So it's over. I've lost the company. Not at all, Mark said, looking up. You still own 51% of Nexus Corp. They can remove you as an officer, but they cannot force you to sell your shares. And without your vote, they can't make any major corporate changes. They can't raise significant funding, and they can't sell the business. A tiny flame of hope flickered to life inside me. So I still have control. Not day-to-day control, he clarified, but ultimate control. Yes, they need you for any big move. I leaned back, my mind racing. What if I sold my shares to someone else? Someone who would block their plans? Mark raised an eyebrow. That is certainly your right. But finding a buyer who would pay fair market value on such short notice would be difficult. What if, I said, a plan starting to form, I already know someone who might be interested? For the next few hours, I used Mark's office as a war room. First, I dug up everything I could on Sterling International, the company whose logo I'd seen on Leo's desk. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Victor Sterling was a predator. He acquired promising tech companies, ripped out their valuable IP, and then dismantled them, laying off 60 to 70% of the staff within a year. Was this my family's endgame? Sell Nexus Corp to this monster? The thought of my loyal employees losing their jobs, of my technology being gutted, made me feel sick. I called Chloe, a junior developer at Nexus Corp who I knew was loyal to me. Chloe, I need a favor, I said, and this has to stay between us. Miss Anderson, I heard what happened. It's so wrong. Thank you. I need to know, have there been meetings with anyone from a company called Sterling International? There was a short pause. Yes, they've been here twice, most recently yesterday afternoon, right after you left. My stomach twisted into a knot. Do you know what they discussed? I wasn't in the meetings, but the rumor is they're talking about an acquisition. Something like $50 million for the whole company. That was it. They were planning to sell the moment they forced me out and bought my shares for pennies on the dollar. One more thing, I said. Were there any other potential buyers looking at us recently? Elias Vance from Vance Ventures was here a couple of months ago, but your brother cut those talks short. Elias Vance. The name sparked an idea. Vance Ventures had the opposite reputation of Sterling. They acquired companies to build them, not to break them. And I had met Elias at a conference last year. He had told me how much he admired Nexus Corp's technology. I thanked Chloe and immediately looked up Elias Vance's contact info. His assistant put me through right away. Claire Anderson, Elias said warmly. I was so sorry to hear about the situation at Nexus Corp. Corporate politics can be a nasty business. News travels fast, I said. In our world, it always does. What can I do for you? I understand you had some interest in Nexus Corp a few months back. We did. Your encryption tech is best in class. But your brother made it clear you weren't for sale. What if I told you, I said, taking a deep breath, that I still own 51% of Nexus Corp, and I might be interested in selling those shares? There was a beat of silence. That would certainly have my attention. But why would you sell your controlling interest? I told him everything, including what I'd discovered about their plan to sell to Sterling. Sterling would destroy everything I built, I concluded. The team, the culture, the tech, all gone for a quick buck. And you'd rather sell to me to prevent that, Elias said, the understanding dawning in his voice. Yes, but I have conditions. I'd want you involved, Elias said. Your expertise is a huge part of the company's value. That might be complicated. Perhaps, but not impossible. When can we meet? 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Elias and his team. I had Mark with me. Before we discuss a price, I said, I need to be clear about my terms. First, no mass layoffs. The team at Nexus Core is the best in the business. Elias nodded. I agree. We don't acquire companies just to gut them. Second, the core technology continues to be developed according to the roadmap I created. That's precisely why we'd be acquiring you. And third, I continued, my voice firm, my family members are removed from their executive positions. Elias looked at me. That could get complicated given their contracts. They violated their fiduciary duties, I said, placing the folder of evidence I'd gathered on the table. I have proof. Elias's legal team reviewed the documents. This would certainly give us grounds for termination, his lawyer said. Elias looked at me. Are you sure this is what you want? They're still your family. The question hit me harder than I expected. For a split second, I hesitated, but then I pictured their cold faces in that conference room. They made their choice, I said. They chose money over family. I'm just holding them to it. We spent the rest of the afternoon hammering out a deal. Elias Vance would acquire my 51% stake for $42 million. In return, all my conditions would be met. As the lawyers drew up the final papers, Elias pulled me aside. Are you absolutely certain about this, Claire? There's no going back. I thought about it. Nexus Core was my baby. Selling my shares meant giving it up forever. But the alternative was watching my family sell it to Victor Sterling for scrap. This way, at least, what I built would survive. My team would be safe. My vision would live on. I'm certain, I said. By late afternoon, the deal was signed. I was no longer the controlling shareholder of Nexus Core. A wire transfer for $42 million was being initiated to my personal bank account. As I left Elias's office, I felt a strange mix of profound grief and intoxicating freedom. My phone showed 3 more missed calls from Leo, each more demanding than the last. Their lawyer had been trying to reach me all day about their fair buyout offer. I smiled, a grim, tired smile, and typed a one-word reply to Leo's last text. Understood. Then I turned off my phone and went home to wait for the storm. The first call came just under 2 hours later. I had turned my phone back on, morbidly curious. Leo's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. A second call came immediately, then a text. Claire, call me, ASAP. It's urgent. I calmly made myself a cup of tea. For months I had been reacting, always on the defensive. Now, for the first time, I was in control. By evening, my phone had exploded. 25 missed calls, 15 from Leo, 7 from my father, 3 from Sophie, a flood of texts and voicemails, each one more panicked than the last. I listened to them in order, tracking their descent from arrogant demands to sheer terror. The first message from Leo, Claire, we need to discuss the buyout offer immediately. Call me. The 10th message, his voice now laced with desperation. Claire, whatever you are doing, stop. You do not understand the consequences of your actions. The 15th message finally revealed why. We just got a call from Victor Sterling, my father's voice, now tight with fear. He says the deal is off because ownership has changed. What did you do? And the 20th message removed all doubt. It was Leo, nearly shouting. Elias Vance just called. He says he now owns 51% of Nexus Core. Tell me you didn't sell your shares without talking to us. The final voicemail was from my father, his voice quiet and menacing. Claire, there is an emergency board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Elias Vance will be there. You need to be there too. We need to understand why you have done this to your family. I smiled at that last part. Done this to them. I sent a short text back to my father. I will be there. Then I called Elias to coordinate our strategy. The next morning, I dressed in a navy blue suit and armor of confidence. When I arrived at the office, the receptionist looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. I walked through the halls, head held high, ignoring the stares. I pushed open the conference room door. My father, Leo, and Sophie were huddled at one end of the table, their faces pale with rage and stress. Elias and his legal team sat calmly at the other. I took the empty seat beside Elias, directly across from my family. Would someone like to explain what is going on? My father demanded. Certainly, Elias said. As of yesterday afternoon, Vance Ventures acquired Claire's 51% stake in Nexus Corp. We are now the controlling shareholder. This is outrageous, Leo exploded. A breach of fiduciary duty. She had an obligation to present any offer to the board. Elias's lawyer shook her head. That's incorrect. As a private shareholder, Miss Anderson had every right to sell her personal assets to whomever she pleased. We had a pending offer from Sterling, my father insisted. A better offer. Better for whom? I asked, speaking for the first time. Not for the employees you were about to fire, not for the technology you were about to let be stripped for parts. You had no right, Sophie said, her voice shaking with anger. Like you had no right to fire me as CEO, I countered. Like you had no right to plot a sale to a corporate raider behind my back? Perhaps, Elias interjected smoothly, but the documentation Miss Anderson provided suggests a number of irregularities. Unauthorized bonuses, questionable consulting fees, serious breaches of fiduciary duty by the executive team. My family exchanged panicked glances. They hadn't counted on me having evidence. Now, Elias continued, I'd like to announce some organizational changes. As the new controlling shareholder, I'm appointing a new board and executive team. He slid documents across the table. Robert, Leo, and Sophie Anderson are relieved of their duties, effective immediately. The shock on their faces was absolute. You can't do this, my father sputtered. We have contracts. Contracts that contain clauses about termination for cause, such as breach of fiduciary duty, Elias's lawyer noted coolly. The evidence is quite clear. Leo turned to me, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. How could you do this to us? To your own family? I stood up, needing to look them in the eye. How could I? You fired me from the company I built in my garage. You faked evidence to paint me as unstable. You were going to sell my life's work to a man who would have destroyed it. You asked me how I could do this? My voice was steady, clear. You taught me a very valuable lesson. You showed me that when enough money is involved, blood means nothing. I just applied the lesson you taught me. We were trying to do what was best for the company, my father insisted, his voice weak. No, I said quietly. You were doing what was best for yourselves. The difference is, my solution protects our employees and our technology. Yours would have sacrificed both for a slightly bigger check. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. This company is all we have. I know, I replied. That's why your betrayal hurt so much. Because Nexus Corp was everything to me too. Elias cleared his throat. I believe we're done here. Security will escort you out to collect your personal belongings. The irony was so thick you could taste it. As they stood to leave, my father paused by my chair. This isn't over, Claire. Families don't do this to each other. I looked up at the man who had once been my hero. You're right, I said. They don't. 6 months passed. With the money from the sale, I started a new venture, Aegis Health, a platform for secure communications in the healthcare industry. 3 of my most talented engineers from Nexus Corp resigned and came to work with me. Their loyalty meant more to me than the money in the bank. News about my family was sparse. They had all found new jobs, but nothing close to the status they'd had at Nexus Corp. The company itself, meanwhile, was thriving under Elias's leadership. About 5 months after the sale, I ran into my father outside a coffee shop. He looked older, tired. Claire, he said, you look good. Thanks, I replied. We made a mistake, he said, looking at the sidewalk. We got greedy. We hurt you. We're sorry. The apology, however weak, stunned me. "Yes," I said, "you did. Your mother misses you," he said. "Is there any chance? Could we start to rebuild?" I thought about it, but the wound was still too deep. "I'm not ready for that," I said honestly. "I need more time." He nodded sadly and walked away. 6 months to the day after I was fired, I received an email from Elias Vance. He wanted to discuss a potential collaboration. My new company had developed a technology that complemented Nexus cores. We met for lunch. "This isn't a ploy to acquire you," he laughed. I learned my lesson about getting between Claire Anderson and her vision. This is a true partnership. We hammered out a deal that would be mutually beneficial, a multi-million-dollar contract that would launch Aegis Health into the stratosphere. That evening, my new team and I celebrated with pizza and cheap champagne in our small office. Looking at their excited faces, I finally understood the most important lesson of all. Success isn't about revenue figures or valuations. It's about integrity. It's about the trust you build. My family had sacrificed that for money and lost everything. I had lost my company but held on to my principles, and in doing so, I had found my way to something far more valuable. The pain of their betrayal hadn't vanished, but it had transformed into a hard-won wisdom. I had learned that my value wasn't tied to Nexus Core or any company. It came from within, from the resilience to get back up after being knocked down and the courage to start again. What would you have done if your own family turned on you in business? Would you have fought back like I did, or chosen another path? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of resilience. And always remember, sometimes the most painful endings are just the start of the most powerful new beginnings. Thank you for listening. End of story.